In the fight to cut carbon emissions around the world, the hot new topic right now is something called blue carbon. In simple terms, plants and mud around bodies of water capture a lot of carbon, and what that promises could amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. McGill University's Gail Chmura is studying marshes along the East Coast. She's joining us this morning from Bathurst, New Brunswick, to explain a little bit more about how blue carbon works. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for bringing this to people's attention. To be more specific, blue carbon is what is stored in the marine ecosystems like salt marshes and seagrass beds that get covered by ocean water, which was why I study the coast of Eastern Canada. And as you pointed out, this is carbon that gets stored in the mud, and it gets into the mud because the plants take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, like all plants do. But blue carbon ecosystems store much more carbon in the mud, and that's just the nature of how the plants there grow. And Canada still has plenty of salt marshes left, and plenty of salt marshes that they could restore, which is really where the big funding could come from.
Gail, really quickly, can you explain why we call it blue carbon?
Okay, so blue carbon is a term that was coined to distinguish it from green carbon, which is the carbon stored in terrestrial ecosystems like forests. But instead, these are the systems that are flooded by the tides twice a day or underwater all the time if they're seagrasses.
Right.
And the plants that grow in these, and the tropics, this would be mangroves, the plants that grow in these systems are the ones that store the blue carbon, are responsible for storing it. And the marshes along our coastline have been accumulating mud, particularly on the Bay of Fundy, for 3,000 years.
Wow.
So that is a large deposit of carbon dioxide, and it costs us nothing as compared to these industrial fixes.
Well, I'm glad you brought up cost, because I want to get your response to companies that could benefit. But first, let's set up for everyone the money behind carbon and why an alternative is so appealing. In the next 4 years, we know Ottawa is going to be charging companies $50 for every ton of CO2 that they emit. So a company that emits 1,000 tons of CO2 will pay $50,000 in fees. Meanwhile, a company that captures carbon doesn't pay any fees. They can sell their credits to those other companies. So here's an example. A company selling credits for absorbing 1,000 tons of CO2 will then make $50,000. So Gail, can you give us some examples of companies that could use blue carbon to make money?
Well, I don't think the companies that would make money would be the companies that were restoring the blue carbon sinks. Because on the Bay of Fundy, we've lost 85% of the original marsh area, and the carbon that's stored when we return the tides to those can be sold already on the voluntary carbon market.
So we know
a company that did the restoration could get the funds. But more importantly is even a community could get funding from the carbon market to restore these ecosystems, which give us fish and very important fish and wildlife habitat. They provide a buffer to storm erosion for people leaving inland. So it's a win-win-win situation if we restore them. So it would really be a company that did that restoration that would make money. But what we don't want to see is people or companies getting out of reducing their CO2 emissions by just buying up these credits, because CO2 has been increasing in our atmosphere for hundreds of years. No matter what countries have signed, what treaties they've signed, CO2 in the atmosphere is still going up. So we have inevitable global warming and a sea level rise that will accompany that. So really, the best strategy is to both preserve these, restore, and industry should be trying to reduce. I don't think it should be an excuse. So I don't really want to promote that.
Well, it's a fascinating topic, something that you've taught us all about today. Thank you so much for joining us on Your Morning.
Okay, thank you.